Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Speak. I'm Talya Pardo. I'm a editor, writing coach, intuitive mentor, and life coach. And it is my pleasure today to welcome Tashina King, a confidence and mindset coach. I want to say it all at once because you do so much. An internationally recognized dance instructor since 2014, and currently working to help people step into their power and shift their mindsets into becoming exactly who they're meant to be. Is that a good way to encapsulate it? Because I feel like we've spoken about so many different areas. You really focus on the mind-body connection with your dancer history and helping people really delve into generational patterns. Also, the world of the whole woman, right? Fertility, pregnancy, childbirth, and how to be truly in your feminine, I think, throughout all of that, and the life of an entrepreneur. So there's a big mix, I think, which a lot of us are really struggling to juggle. I think these days, especially, how to embody the feminine and really live out what our feminine side has been biologically primed for, right? And to be who we are in that sense, and at the same time in a modern world to be an entrepreneur and to live out our dreams for ourselves as individuals, and how to balance all of that without being burnt out or overwhelmed, which is a challenge that I know all of us are facing. So I think that was a bit in a nutshell, but I'll hand it over to you. So it's so interesting to know, because the dancing side of things, I think, and the coaching side of things, it seems that you kind of develop those parallel, like simultaneously. So maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about how that came to be.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first off, I'm really, really excited to be here, and I loved our conversation that we had when we first connected. So to carry that on into this space is wonderful. So thanks for inviting me to be with you today.
Yes, it was
good. So a little bit about me and my path to where I'm at now is I have danced since I was about 2.5 years old. And talk about something that you feel like your soul yearns for and is called to do. That's really how I felt just at a super young age. I just felt called to be in a dance studio, moving, connecting to music, and expressing through that outlet. And I still dance to this day, and I have had a professional dance international career, coaching, judging, competing, mentoring in solo movement style. So I was with a performing arts company for several years, where we got to do different tours in Europe. And in that setting, we're working with at-risk youth primarily. So that was really incredible. And it was at that stage of my dance experience that I really fell in love with teaching and traveling, and firsthand really getting to use dance as a doorway to connect to people's self-worth, self-confidence, self-esteem. And it was a dialect that we could mutually speak, but led into a lot of growth for the youth that we were working with. And after that, I transitioned into a form of partner dancing called West Coast Swing. So that is where I really got to have a professional dance partner. He and I were partners for about 5 years. And again, in that capacity, it was much more of an entrepreneur setup for me, where I was handling my own bookings and travelings and setting pricing contracts. So from the entrepreneur side that's where I really stepped into that side of things with my dance career, teaching internationally. But because it brought about the aspect of the masculine and feminine and the leader and the follower roles, it opened up a whole other layer and level to talking about for me personally, my role as a follower, my role as a woman, in that capacity and that dynamic. And similarly with the students that I have worked with from all over the world. And in the form of West Coast Swing, there's really been a balance more of not just male and female, but leader and follower, and how oftentimes women are doing the leader role,
Right.
because social dancing, at least, there's oftentimes not enough men leading. So the women have really stepped into their own space of wanting to be able to lead. So it also brings about this opportunity to talk about how a woman can be a strong leader,
Right,
while still being feminine, and then transitioning into the more feminine aspect of the dance when she is dancing with a male leader. So it's just been this really beautiful layered web of growth and insight, introspection, not only for myself through my dance career, but also for the students that I've worked with. And the piece that brought in the mindset coaching was both through my performing arts company days and in my West Coast swing professional traveling part of my career. I always felt like there was more that I was able to achieve. I felt like I had the tenacity, the commitment to myself, to the training. I had the skill sets I felt to be at that top competitive level, to be coaching internationally, but there was always something in my way, and it was kind of like a glass wall is how I describe it. I could see the opportunities on the other side of the glass wall, but I didn't know how to break through the glass wall. And it was frustrating because at that point I had moved to California twice to pursue my professional dance career. I had given everything, my time, my money, my energy, to create and manifest this professional career, but it just really didn't seem to be taking off. And so it was really at the time where I was ready to walk away from my entire dance career that things shifted. I had to be pushed more or less to that point of walking away from something that I held so dear to my heart, to have my eyes open to what it was that was really standing in my way. And what it was this internal belief about myself, this internal pattern that I would never amount to anything as a dancer.
Wow.
Yeah, and it really was first planted in my subconscious, or my soul, if you would, at about 12 years old, because at 12 years old, I had been dancing at the studio that I had been at since 2.5. So 2.5 to roughly 12 years old. My parents were getting a divorce at the time. Geographically, it just didn't make sense to continue going to this same studio. So my parents and I had a meeting with the owner, who had been my mentor for basically 10 years, and told her, this was no longer going to be available to me and my family, and I was going to move to a different studio. And it was after both my parents had got up, went to the restroom, like we were wrapping up the conversation, getting into the car, and I was by myself. The mentor stood up and wagged her finger in my face and said, "You'll never amount to anything as a dancer." And looking back at it, she obviously clearly had some of her own pain points triggered in that conversation. And she vocalized those own insecurities, those own pains to me. But at 12 years old, I didn't yet have the ability to discern that.
No.
So little did I realize in the moment that I took that to heart. Like, I remember being like, ouch, that hurt, that was really mean. But I guess I didn't realize I took it to the depth of my soul to believe it to be true for myself, because then literally everything after that, I realized at the point when I was ready to walk away from my dance career in California, that it was that conversation where I felt like things really shifted for me, and how I was able to perform, how I was able to present on the stage, or put myself out there and take risks, whether that was in the performing arts company or in my West Coast swing career. And so it was at that time when that observation and that aha happened for me, that I was like, this is not the life that I want to continue to manifest. I don't want to continue to manifest a life that's a reflection of this belief. Because I also know I am worthy of it. I am capable, and I do deserve to have a life that is in alignment with what I've felt my soul called to do since I was 2.5. And so that was really the opening to where I started to explore working with my subconscious mind and the beliefs, or the energy patterns, however you want to look at it, that I held at the subconscious level and in my body at a cellular level. And it was after that, it was the only thing I literally changed. And within 2 months, I finally started making finals in the competitive field. And then 3 years to the day of my very first competitive event, I made the champion level, the top level possible competitively, and placed fourth. So I really experienced firsthand the power of our mindset, which for me is also energy, and how important it is for us to really work at that level with our being in order to manifest transformation and change in our lives.
Wow, I see your journey so clearly. Like it is so apparent as you're telling it that everything had to happen to lead you to where you are today. And, I'm a believer that there are soul contracts that we make, and there are other souls that are meant to come our way for good and for bad, which set us on our path. And it almost feels like the story of your mentor, it came from her unconsciously, but in your soul story, it had to hurt you in order for it to bring out your greatest strength. Right. That's something I've learned myself, my own experiences too. It's right from those deep hurts. If we're able and we're willing to have an awareness and to begin to examine them, they really actually serve as the catalysts for us coming to our greatest potential. Yeah. So she much as it hurt you, she almost did you a favor, because it's like a springboard launching into something new once you've overcome it, right? Or once you have that aha moment. That's incredible. And so, and I had so many thoughts while you were telling the story. I didn't want to interrupt you at all. I was like, I should have had a paper to just keep writing the questions as they're coming up. But the other thing that I was recognizing when you were talking about your career in the dance world and its contribution also to your coaching abilities and your skills, is how there must be a connection that you were able to intuit between the movement of dance and the expression of emotion, or and also the exploration of emotions, and that must be incredibly impactful for disadvantaged youth that you were working with. I mean, it's for anybody, but especially for people who are living really difficult lives with little guidance. You're giving them tools to help them tap into themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. When my parents divorced, everything shifted. My whole life felt at 12 years old like everything was upended, and dance was the only thing that stayed consistent really at that time. And dance became my way of processing the pain and the sadness and the just everything that came along with my parents divorcing and going different ways. So dance became my own therapy of processing it. Sometimes I was very aware of the emotion that I was feeling as I was dancing. Sometimes I wasn't, but it was, I think, during that performing arts company time that I was like, even though I haven't had the hardships that some of these kids have had, I can at least relate to there being pain in life and anger and frustration, and sometimes the emotions that are so big you don't even know how to label them or talk about them, but you don't have to necessarily talk about them in order to feel and process. And so dance, because that was how I was able to process, I think became a part of that experience when I was working with the at-risk youth, of being able to share that common thread of and because it was in Europe, mostly in Germany, some of the kids knew English, some of the kids didn't.
Right.
We didn't have sometimes the mutual language of English. I speak very little German. But because that wasn't available to us, dance became the language that we were able to mutually connect with and through to process and to connect to confidence or some self-love or self-appreciation. So yeah.
Yeah, the element of confidence is really key, because I think about how emotions get stuck in the body, right? Especially very intense traumatic emotions, and I've learned myself through only as an adult, learning that when I'm feeling overwhelmed with I need to physically move to just help it filter through and filter out, right? Otherwise I become paralyzed. So like my outlets are walking or cleaning the house, frantically cleaning, but but dance seems also, like you said, to really contribute to the confidence part of it, right? And the self-expression of that. You're transmuting the negative emotions into something, into a positive energy.
Yeah. And I think, just a note for anyone listening, you don't have to quote unquote be a dancer who takes classes or lessons
Absolutely
to transmute your emotions and feelings through movement. Simply turning on a song, I've done this myself plenty of times. I've encouraged clients to do it. Literally just turn the lights off, pick a song that you feel emotionally connected to, that resonates with you in the moment, and just move. It doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't have to be any certain criteria, but just the pure movement connecting to music can be incredibly therapeutic, with there being no other goal at hand other than to just move, to feel, and to process.
Right. No judgment there. Nobody's there to watch you and see how graceful or coordinated you are. That's fantastic advice. I think I might actually incorporate that into my toolkit too. And the other thing, to move on to, there's so much I want to get to. The other thing you talked about when you had a dance partner, and balancing the feminine and masculine, it's a huge topic. I see kind of surfacing in the coaching world, and it's so important. I mean, it's dear to my heart too, because once I began to understand really what the feminine is, and how it balances so beautifully with the masculine, it's something I think that needs to be much more widely emphasized and appreciated. So it's very interesting that you encountered that, which would make sense in your dancing with a male partner, because the feminine receives, like you said, the feminine doesn't lead, the feminine follows, right? And is led and held space for, and it's the man who has, it's the masculine that has the leadership space. So generally, right? And so how did you have trouble stepping into, like, truly surrendering into that feminine space, and how do we connect that to today's superwoman who's really embodying a lot of masculine energy because she feels she needs to, right?
I would say personally, probably where I struggled the most in my partnership was wanting to more or less backlead at the beginning.
What does backlead mean?
Backlead is, so traditionally the man will lead a certain pattern,
okay,
with a certain technique, right, which allows then the follower to execute the reciprocal movement on the other end of the arm, or within the frame that the two dancers are dancing in. Okay. Backleading is when the woman or the follower thinks she knows what the man should be doing and tries to force, I guess, in simple ways, force what she thinks it should be.
Right. Yes. That's funny. It's, that's directly relatable to what we can hear in so many relationships,
Yeah. So calling the shots, trying to be both. The woman trying to, or the follower trying to be both the leader and follower, is backleading in really simple terms. And so when any of us are in a masculine society, a masculine culture, we're really oftentimes in our career asked to, or more or less forced to step into that masculine, we start living in that space so habitually that we haven't really nurtured that feminine side, or that softer side, or the space where we allow the men to provide, so that we can then, be a little bit more relaxed and embrace the other aspects of ourselves. So for me, dancing in my partnership early on, I really felt like things on his end of my frame, my connection to him physically in the partnership, should be a certain way. And so it took me quite a while to be able to let him lead, to really let him set things up so that I could then do my part. And when I released that need for control, when I released that, and for me, perfectionism was a huge part of it, because I had trained in ballet and I had this very concrete viewpoint that technique needs to be there and it has to be, you know, X, Y, Z. And it was a very rigid feel. And so I more or less at the beginning was superimposing that on him, where he's from Tennessee. He grew up dancing in country bars. Like, his background and entrance into our partnership was total opposite of my entrance into our partnership. So there was an embracing of different paths. There was an embracing of different approaches to the partnership that I had to explore, as did he, and letting him have his own journey in learning, as opposed to imposing how I learned and how I felt like he should be learning. So there was a lot of relinquishing control and perfectionism that I had to really navigate. And then I see surrender into that. I see a lot of when I work with wedding couples, especially, or just individuals that are taking dance classes that I teach. The woman really is still in her masculine when they come into the class with her partner, boyfriend, husband, whatever that dynamic may be. And the men get so frustrated because they are called to be doing their role. But we as women, I feel in general, oftentimes don't allow the men the space to give us that. And it's so reflective seeing that in a class,
like a mirror,
and hearing, you know, the challenges that women are having in their personal life. So I would say that was the hardest part, to answer your question. Long answer.
It's a great answer, because it really is. I mean, I'm listening to you and it's so, like you say, reflective, and highlights everything that I see and have learned is going on in society between men and women. I just wanted to say it's very interesting. It's cute what you said about the two different places that you came from. One is, the thought that occurred to me was, it doesn't sound like you were very much in your body either, because you were very concerned with the structure. So you yourself maybe were more in the head than the body. If I'm not offending you to say that.
Go for it.
But also it reminds me of the figure skating movie with DB Sweeney and Moira Kelly. I can't remember what it's called, but it's about this like champion figure skater who loses her partner and she has to pair up with this hockey player.
Yeah, I think like the famous line is like toe pick.
That's right. That's okay. So yeah, it kind of reminded me like that, but that's very cute, right? And it sounds like he was very masculine. And so, like you say, women, I think it's been a process over decades, right? Over generations of what has happened. I blame feminism a lot for this, because it's not what it originally meant to be. And what has happened is the real feminine has been portrayed as weak. And there's two sides to it, right? There's definitely enough stories of abusive relationships where women have been taken advantage of and not appreciated and hurt for their feminine. So the anger there is real, and the defensiveness. I think we come into our masculine also for the defensive posture. And there's layers. And the modern world that has pushed women out into the workplace in the kind of give us our independence, but then we have to play on an equal playing field. And then that means putting aside all those things that make us women and mothers, right? Those priorities have to be put away if we're going to be able to compete and measure up in this corporate, working world, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely many contributing factors to what's happened, but like you said, it's reflective of what I see happening now. There's so many women in their masculine in relationships. We don't give men the space or the trust, I think, to allow them to be the men. And the men are being told that like who you are isn't good, right? You're bad, and we want you to be more like us and be more emotional. And, I see it in my own relationship too. My boyfriend is very, very masculine. And there are times where I'm emotionally expressing something, and I'll be like, but I need you to say it this. And he's like, I'm not a girl. I say it in my way, and I need you to try and hear it. I'm saying almost the same thing that you want me to say, but in such a different way. It's such a masculine way that translation is sometimes hard if we're not able to sit back, release the anxiety, and hear them, and see them for who they are, so it's really, I think, so important for us to be exploring this now, because it's all part of the general healing state that people are aiming towards. And I think for all women out there, if it's essential to our own healing for us to really be able to appreciate and understand the masculine.
Yeah. It's been a topic that has been coming up a lot with the clients that I've been working with, which is really interesting because there was one particular conversation recently with a female client where we were talking about her desire to really step into her feminine. And I started to ask her, well, what is your definition of feminine? And she realized predominantly it was what her grandmother was, how her grandmother portrayed herself, but not in an empowering way at all.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
There was this internal debate and struggle where she, at her soul level, felt called to step into her feminine, but her conscious definition and perception of it was something that she was really resistant and didn't want to be. And so the conversation that's been happening with a lot of my female clients, at least, is what do you want your feminine essence and nature to look like? It doesn't have to look like your mom's, your grandmother's, even your great grandmother's, but being in a position and in a place to define it for yourself, and you getting to choose what that looks like, and going beyond, especially the Western, I think, definition and perception of being feminine, and exploring past that. So it's just been a really intriguing concept to me to communicate about, because she had a very Western perception of it, but yet a part of her yearned for it. And so within that dialogue that occurred, it really just started to blow the doors open of, oh, I do get to choose how I want to be feminine in my life. And I can choose how it looks, how it sounds, how it feels. And it doesn't have to be what I saw demonstrated to me up to now, firsthand.
Right. It can be an empowered version of what feminine is, with room for masculine, right? You leaving the room for the masculine to balance you out. No, that's beautiful. And that's modern divine feminine, I think, right? There's so many fellow coaches that I see who talk about it, and everyone is different, right? And everyone portrays them, like everybody has their own persona, and yet those who really work with it really do embody the divine feminine. And some of them are incredible, multi-figure coaches, and some of them, some of them work mainly with crystals and whatever their focus is, they still embody that feminine because they've been able to tap into it and define it for themselves. So that's really, I love that topic. I think I could talk about it all day. It has really helped me have such an appreciation for men, right? That is not prevalent anymore, unfortunately. We really need to bring that up. That's part of our job too, I think, is to keep celebrating the good and how good they can be.
Well, just a little bit of a segue, because I know you had said you want to talk about it. And for me, this really translates into what we're talking about and into conscious parenting, or what I really like to call empowered parenting. Is I've got a 3-year-old son, and I'm 37 weeks pregnant with my second son.
You are, yes.
And just being completely open, honest, and vulnerable. It's taken a lot for me in my mind and what I saw forecasted, what I forecasted for myself. I really thought I would have at least one daughter, if not 2 daughters. And being given the gift of having two sons, I've really had to do a lot of my own work and I think the dancing portion has really been helpful in that, that the men are important. And I have an opportunity with these two young boys, to support them and nurture them into a whole human that embraces both their masculine and feminine sides in a way that they can show up and be, like what you're talking about, that I can really heal that part for myself where I had some preconceived ideas. And I think that comes from some past generational stuff. But it took me as a parent, as a mom, a lot of time and healing internally to really accept and be able to celebrate the fact that I have two sons instead of what I so thought I would have my whole life was at least one daughter.
Well, you're saving yourself a lot of drama, I'll tell you that, as a mother of two girls.
Yeah.
So there's that. Because that myth is based on complete truth. But at the same time, I really think that first, you are actually given quite an honor to be able to be the mother to boys, especially because at least what I'm noticing is a lot more girls are being born than boys lately. They're even like my children's school classroom like makeup has been consistently like 2/3 girls, 1/3 boys, for most of, their years that they were born. So just in that you can nurture males in this society and to bring them up to be conscious masculine, like comfortable with their masculinity and proud of it and not cowed by today's messages. I think that you're really being given quite a blessing and an honor. So it's really lovely to see you being, rising to that and embracing it.
Yeah, it took a while, and to be honest, there's still days where I grapple with an element or aspect of it, but it's really been an interesting healing journey for myself personally. Because when I first found out my first son was a boy, it was like, well, what if he turns out like all of these other men that, have come in our society and culture that really are not a conscious man, an empowered man. And it took me a while to be like, well, actually, I have a very active role in.
I was gonna say, like, that's kind of up to you and your husband. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that comes from the disempowered feminine.
Yes. Yeah.
Generationally,
Yes.
And so it took me a while to finally find that resonance and that connection that I have a really incredible opportunity to help support these two young men, these two souls coming in as men, in a way that really is empowered.
I'm sure they're going to be incredible people. I have no doubt. So when we're talking about conscious parenting, so how do you see the balance? We talk like the feminine and masculine, but in the roles of mother and father, because we've seen such an imbalance too, I think, over the last few decades in terms of the father's role, and the mother's role in terms of nurturing their family. So how do you see it?
In our household, I would say for the most part, both my husband and I are very nurturing in very different ways, which I really, my husband and I had conversations about that before we had kids. And then as my 3-year-old has grown up, we've continued to have conversations about that. We both, do disciplining in different ways, but both holding boundaries and having one another's back and mutual respect between both parents. So at least in our household, I feel like we're doing a good job navigating those conversations and navigating those topics from a conscious place. And then, as children do, I think they are our greatest teachers, so when another level of opportunity comes up for additional growth or conversation, my husband and I have conversations about, well, how do we want to handle this? And how is this laying a foundation for future decisions or future,
That's amazing.
Future perspectives that he might have. And I really appreciate that about my husband. And, you know, I've definitely noticed the times, going back to the dance analogy, where I was back leading, you know, the times where I'd back lead it, it wasn't well received. But when I backed off and let my husband and I have a mutual conversation, like we would in the form of partner dancing that we both do, you know, there was more space for both of us to be genuine and authentic, and for both of us to be heard, and then find a way that fits us and our family and our values and morals and how we want to raise our children.
And it so benefits your children to be able to see parents who are intentional and mindful about, it's not just reactive parenting, right? It's they're watching a partnership. You're setting such an example for them as future mates, you know, and husbands too, to see how to navigate parenthood, right? I mean, they're young, and one's not here yet, but you know, so but you know, you're already setting that stage for it. And so speaking of that, of your, you know, impending childbirth, like I'd love to have time to get into the next topic, because I can't believe we're already flying through our time together. We talked last time, and I loved our conversation, and I feel like we're going to have so much more to talk about, but we talked also about fertility, pregnancy, childbirth, the body connection, like C-sections, women who have C-sections, and how that is almost not letting the child have their own day and time. It's a big topic that I'm just throwing at you. So whatever maybe comes to your mind that you want to highlight for our audience, that maybe you work with mostly with your clients in relation to that, because I know we talked extensively about it, but
yeah, I definitely have clients that I've supported in the realm of fertility. There's, for myself personally, a majority of the clients that I've worked with in this capacity, it's been more around the pregnancy itself into the experience of the childbirth.
Okay.
I feel, I've got my own personal thoughts and beliefs about things, but when I'm working with a client, my greatest passion is helping that woman to feel confident, empowered, and emotionally, mentally, spiritually ready for that entrance into becoming a mother. So if that woman is wanting a home birth, I want to support her in feeling confident in that. If she's wanting to have an epidural, I want her to feel empowered and confident in that choice and that decision. If she's wanting a C-section, I want her, my goal in providing and supporting women is that whatever course they choose, that they are choosing it for themselves first and foremost, and for their family, what they truly believe is in the best decision for their family, for themselves and their family, rather than being pressured into one thing or another. Because I think as a mom, it's incredibly important to honor yourself in how you parent, and that journey into motherhood, that transition is the childbirth, however you choose to birth. So I work with women and helping them feel mentally, emotionally, spiritually ready for whatever it is that they're choosing. And also, in the event that something should have to change in their birth plan, feeling empowered in that experience, being able to adapt in the moment. Maybe it's about advocating for themselves, so they're not pressured into doing something they don't necessarily want to do, that isn't medically necessary, right?
Yes.
So, and then even after childbirth, if it's a client that I didn't work with at that stage of the game, but has trauma around how their child was birthed or a stillbirth or something like that, you know, supporting women in that transitionary grief phase as well.
Would you even say like postpartum as well? I mean, so I'm listening to you, and you're right. It's so important to feel, even if your birth plan doesn't go according to plan, you didn't fail. Like if you knew you needed a home, you know, you wanted to do a home birth, or you didn't want to have an epidural or whatever, and you end up needing the C-section because the baby's in distress or whatever, and not feeling that you failed at what your intentions were.
Mhm.
It's so important because I know I'm really happy to hear you're doing this work. I know I'm just relating to my own experience. So I was so unprepared for all of it. And for the postpartum depression afterwards, I had no idea what it was. And I really struggled through um, the first few weeks after the birth because my body was completely traumatized. And so it's important even before the baby's born to have that, know that support is there. I
Mhm.
think you're making such a difference in how a child starts his life and how a mother starts her motherhood, right? I think, especially for the first time, right? I think after the second one, you're more familiar, you're in
Right.
the groove. But for the first one, that's so essential because there's the whole, I want to have a baby, I'm so excited to have a baby, but like, what does that even mean? And all of these changes my body goes through, and what is going on to my body, and
Yeah.
it's like your body's not your own anymore, right? And especially through the birth, you know it's really not. You're completely taken over by the instinctive process, most of the time, right? In the kind of general patterns of things. And so to not feel lost or kind of um out of control internally while all that's happening, that's so essential, and it's so nice to see how even that world has really developed. Because
Mhm.
when I gave birth 14 years ago, I was lucky to get like a community center nurse to come over 5 days after I gave birth, and like it was a disaster,
Yeah.
so it's, I think, another step in actually helping women step into their feminine, right, and embody
Absolutely.
their feminine, right? It's the core root of it all, the motherhood of it, that if you can approach this as aware, and as with as much of a tool set and support as possible, um, you're giving everybody the best opportunities. It's making me think of, I had a conversation in one of my other interviews
Mhm.
about how the women's community, right, or the women's community is kind of lost, whereas in older cultures, when a girl had her period, right, or when women had their period, they were segregated from the general population. And it's presented in modern times as something derogatory or dirty, but it's actually not, if you can look at it with the lens of, this is the support that all women need. And it's also the way that um, femininity and feminine knowledge and wisdom was passed on through the generations, because you'd have young girls and middle-aged women and women of all ages in those tents or huts or whatever together during that time. And what do we think happened then? Like, the stories were shared, the wisdom and the knowledge was shared of how to care for your body and what's going to happen during pregnancy. Like, those support systems in the modern world are sadly very, very sparse, right? And we're lucky to have the coach, right? But that's a one person. But the feeling of community and women's
Right.
community,
Mhm.
tribe, yeah, it's really, it's something I think us women coaches who are working to you know revive the feminine, I think we're all looking to rebuild that. and
Mhm.
and I see it growing. Like, it's on my social media, okay, but I see it growing, and it's beautiful because it's around the world. And
Mhm.
that's maybe the best that we're going to get in these times. But I think there's a maybe conscious or even unconscious move towards that on all of our parts,
Mhm.
to bring that back, because I think women have really been lacking in that kind of wisdom and support. So it's so beautiful that you touch on. I think you're the first coach that I've spoken with that works with women in that stage, right? In
Wow.
those times of life.
Well, for whatever reason, I'm also just in that concept of tribe and community, feeling really called to
Mm.
just say, I think it's crucial that when we are in that space and we're sharing what's going on for us as a woman, that we share it from an authentic, genuine place
Yes.
versus a dramatized,
Hmm.
let me project or let me be dramatic about it.
Yes. Oh yes,
And
definitely.
then when you're in the space on the flip, when you are holding space for other women, or you are in that community setting, tribe, of really being conscious of how you're receiving the information. Because in the realm of, childbirth, quote unquote, there's so many horror stories. Women tend to talk about, how dramatic it was, and how, how hard
Yes.
it was, and they just like they amplify the
Yeah.
drama of it. Yes, it's real, it's raw, it's humanist or animalistic oftentimes in that childbirth process. And there's a way that I think women could step into sharing their authentic story from I don't know what the word is, but a whole place
Yes.
versus a drama place. I don't know what other word to say. And then when you're listening, really taking in, am I taking in the truth of what this person is sharing as information? Am I taking it in as this is going to be my experience, or this is what could happen to me, and then letting the fear start to burrow itself? Because I find that especially in the childbirth realm, women are so afraid of the childbirth experience because of what their best friends have said, and how their moms shared their stories of how they were born into the world. So really being conscious of, this is what has occurred for other people, but it doesn't have to be my experience necessarily.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another way to take it also might be the like, well, my childbirth experience was, that much more, because I think we're a society that is really trained on drama, on outrage, on it's more, there's another word for drama that I want to use, but really it's all about that, right? It's manifesting and manipulating the fear and the tension and the stress of things instead of the beauty of things. So I really appreciate you adding to that, because that is absolutely right. And I think the more we build community and the more we seek to heal ourselves and help others heal, the more we will be able to have those kinds of conversations from that space, instead of the like, well, my birth, I barely had time for the epidural, like everybody has their story, and it's normal, and it's about understanding that there's wisdom in each experience, and that's what we need to extract from it. And I think that's really beautiful. That's so important. And you're really inspiring me. I think I want to start working on building some kind of real women's tribe. I think that's going to be my next initiative. I'm getting a real download here. So thank you for this inspiration. And I will reach out to you for it too. So we're coming to the end of our time. I love this conversation. I hope that I can have you come back again so we can just talk some more, maybe after you've had your son and you've settled in, and maybe there's new reflections for you as mother of two, because that's also a whole other life. That was one thing that I said to my boyfriend. I realized that every child is born into a different family. I'm sure I'm not the first person to say that either, right? Like the first baby's born into just parents. Second one is born into an established family with other kids, right? So each subsequent child is really has a very different family experience, which impacts the dynamics. But that's for another day. So do you have I have a book list on a site called bookshop.org, where I'm creating a book list of all of my guests' recommendations. So do you have a book to share with us today for my book list?
One that just really, I think, aligns beautifully with the work that I do with clients in the realm of Psyche, which is the mindset work approach that I use with clients, is a book by Dr. Bruce Lipton called The Honeymoon Effect.
Ooh, there was another guest recommended a different book by him, so I'll add that.
The Psychology of Belief.
Yes,
I would recommend that one as well. For me personally, The Honeymoon Effect was a little bit less scientific word based, so it was a little bit easier for me to digest and get through, whereas the Psychology of Belief had a lot more science in its terminology in the book, so it just took a little bit more digesting for me to get through it. But both are fantastic and I'd highly recommend.
Is there another one called, I think it was Biology of Belief, is that possible?
I'm sorry, the
That was,
biology.
yeah, biology. That was the other book. Yeah. So I understand. That's great. Well, then now our audience will have an options of
Yeah.
accessible options for them. So that's amazing. I will add that to the book list. That's also going to be included in the show notes. I also realized that I'm pretty sure this is the 10th episode. So I want to thank you for being the guest on my 10th episode. It's very exciting. And we'll do a little extra celebration. We'll see if we can share some clips too from this episode. So to finish us off, please tell our audience where they can find you and where they can reach you.
Yeah, I'm on social media. Instagram is at Transform with Tashina, and my website is empowered2greatness.com, and that's the number 2. And I just also have a free offer for anyone listening on perfectionism and on how to break the perfectionist mindset. So the backslash of the website would be perfectionist kit. So if that's of interest, maybe we could add that to the show notes too, to support women and starting to work through perfectionism that might be driving them to not stepping into their fullness. So
that's amazing. Yes, all your links will be included in the show notes, and you can always reach out to me. I'll have Talya Pardo Phoenix Rising on Facebook and Instagram, and a whole other bunch of other sites that ends up being a mouthful to say. So those are the 2 main places to reach me, and my website, phoenixrisingmentoring.com, if anyone wants to reach out to me, or to Tashina and find a way to reach her if you didn't catch all the links. So this was wonderful. I thank you so much. I wish you, this was really amazing. Me too. And I do hope that you'll be back again. And I wish you an easy and safe and quick delivery coming up soon for you, and so much excitement for you and your family. So I'm really happy for you. And I thank you so much. This was beautiful.
It was divinely led. Thanks, Talya.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.